The jerk refused to take responsibility and claimed I was a stalker fan, leaving me to face online bullying. So, I sent him straight to prison. Dating a celebrity boyfriend in secret, we were caught by the paparazzi. To protect his career, both he and his agent claimed I was a stalker fan, letting the internet tear me apart. The jerk, "Babe, you have to understand, I'm in the prime of my career right now." Me, not for long. Later, his role as the male lead was stolen. He was criticized by everyone online, and I personally sent him to jail. Before his execution, I looked him in the eye. "Human trafficker, enjoy your last meal." I was just chilling at home when disaster struck out of nowhere. It was the second day of the long weekend, and my bestie Sophie had been blowing up my phone with relentless calls. I was still half asleep when I finally picked up. "Emily, do you even know you've gone viral on the campus forum?" Sophie's furious voice almost made me drop my phone. My brain buzzed. "What are you talking about?" Still groggy, I tried to make sense of her words. Sophie, clearly exasperated, continued with her signature tough love tone. "Just check the forum yourself. I can't believe someone posted photos of you having dinner with some minor celebrity. The school's fangirls are losing their minds. Good thing you've been off campus for the past few days. You have no idea how many people have been banging on the dorm room door." I rubbed my messy hair, trying to process. "Who are you even talking about?" "Who else? You're killing me here, Emily." "Hang on, let me check." "Don't hang up," I said as I opened the campus forum. Sure enough, the top post, complete with a 9-photo collage, featured me front and center. And the male lead? None other than a rising star from a recently popular web drama. The photos were clearly taken without our knowledge. Well, these are quite something. The shots were so well timed they could be screensavers. The caption, however, was absurd. "Hot new star spotted at Midtown University, sharing a romantic dinner with a mystery girl. What's going on here, Emily? How do you even know him?" This could blow up and hit trending topics. His drama isn't even finished airing, and he's already got legions of fangirls calling him their husband. "Now you've painted a target on your back," Sophie said, barely holding it together. I could practically hear her itching to slap some sense into me. "Relax, relax." "I'll reach out to Jason," I said, dodging a few more scoldings before managing to end the call. That's right, Jason, the so-called rising star, was my secret boyfriend. Why secret? Because he once gave me the whole spiel about being in the prime of his career and how it wasn't the right time to go public. I got it. Pop idols can't have girlfriends, and actors probably shouldn't either, not until they've successfully transitioned. So, I agreed to keep things under wraps. What I didn't expect was to be whisked off to a private meeting room the very same day. Sitting in a conference room, I watched as a woman paced back and forth nervously. I recognized her. It was Jason's agent, Grace. And judging by the way she was looking at me, I wasn't exactly her favorite person. I didn't care. "Where's Jason?" I asked. We were the only two people in the room. The other party involved in this mess had yet to show up. I had a bad feeling about this. "Ms. Emily," Grace said, ignoring my question and handing me a folder. "Jason isn't here today. I'm here on behalf of him and the company to handle this situation." I frowned, taking the folder. "And how exactly do you plan to handle this?" "Sign this and release a joint statement with us denying the relationship. Say you're just an overzealous fan who happened to run into Jason at the restaurant," Grace said. She stood while I sat, her condescending posture making me uncomfortable. Ding, ding. My phone buzzed with notifications. Picking it up, I scanned the screen before looking back up at Grace. "Are you sure fans will buy this story?" I handed her my phone. The latest trending topic was a photo of me and Jason at his place, with him opening the door. Coincidence? Coincidence all the way to his house? Grace's eyes widened in shock when she saw the photo. She slammed my phone on the table in frustration before storming out to make a call. I glared at my poor, abused phone. Of course I was pissed. I patted it affectionately before opening my chat with Jason, but my messages to him remained unanswered. What's the meaning of this? I had a pretty good idea. Picking up my phone, I dialed his number. After a long pause, he finally answered. Hello? His voice was hoarse. He must have been under a lot of stress. I softened my tone instinctively. Jason, what's the plan moving forward? The sudden exposure of our relationship was a mess neither of us had anticipated. Just then, Grace returned. Here's the plan. We'll clarify that you're Jason's stalker fan. Someone who followed him to the restaurant and then back to his home. Her words left me stunned. Admit to being a stalker fan? Did she have any idea how vicious the internet could be? She might as well have handed me to the wolves. No matter if they were fans or not, everyone shared the same attitude toward stalker fans. Could they even be called fans? They were just plain creepy. Over the years, the actions of stalker fans had become legendary, tracking itineraries, doxing, and even more perverse behaviors that were too numerous to count. If she openly admitted to being a stalker fan, online bullying would be the least of her worries. Both fans and ordinary people would probably strip her of her human status. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and confirmed again. Jason, did you hear that? Is this the final decision from your company? Grace probably didn't realize I was on the phone, let alone that the person on the other end was Jason. She froze for a moment, then shouted toward my phone, Jason, this is the company's decision. If you don't follow through, have you thought about the consequences? The person on the other end of the line said nothing. Watching as Grace tried to grab my phone, I shot up from my seat. Did she think I was spineless? Holding the phone in one hand and grabbing the chair I had just been sitting on with the other, I looked ready to fight. Grace was taken aback, seemingly surprised that someone as mild-mannered as I usually was could have such a fiery side. I gripped one leg of the chair, making it clear that if she dared to step closer, I wouldn't hesitate to swing. Take one more step and I dare you, I'll smash your head open. You wouldn't dare. Oh, just try me. I shot her a fierce glare. Jason, I just need one word from you. Is your company's decision something you agree with or not? By then my heart was already growing cold. His attitude thus far was infuriating. You claim you're in a critical phase of your career, that your profession is unique, and you ask me to be patient and keep things under wraps, making me feel like some secret mistress, sneaking around just to meet up. Fine, I supported you. And now? You're using me as a scapegoat and a shield? If it weren't for the fact that you've treated me well enough in the past, I'd say whoever wants to date you can have you. Finally, after a long silence, he sighed. Emily, I'm in a critical phase of my career right now. I didn't need him to finish to know exactly what he was going to say. Frustrated, I cut him off impatiently. Ha, Jason, your career is about to crash and burn. Before he could respond, I hung up the phone. You want to save yourself at my expense? Well, if the fish has to die, then the net's going down with it. I shoved my phone back into my pocket and shot an icy smile at the annoying woman in front of me. Grace, don't forget, while Jason and I were dating, even though we weren't caught and didn't go public, I've got plenty of photos and chat records. I, Emily, have never been one to let others push me around. Over the years, the most foolishly love-struck thing I've done was agreeing to keep our relationship low-key. To be honest, I didn't entirely agree to it for his sake. I had my own reasons. You see, I'm sort of in the entertainment industry myself. To be precise, half the entertainment industry is made up of artists signed to my family's company. If our relationship went public, my identity would undoubtedly be exposed. Words like riding on a woman's coattails or sugar mommy would inevitably start appearing next to our names. Jason only knew me as a college student from a fairly well-off family. With graduation approaching, I had planned to start working at my family's company after finishing school and then surprise him. But instead of a surprise, I got a shock. Maybe worried that I might actually go down with them. Grace glanced at the chair I was holding and ultimately didn't dare to stop me. As for the harsh words I had just thrown out, they probably didn't take them seriously at all. After all, why would anyone care about the threats of an ordinary college student? No one could have guessed I'm far from ordinary. Stepping out of the building, the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I turned around and got into my family's Rolls-Royce. The driver, who doubled as my bodyguard, was a towering man over 6 feet tall with a broad, muscular build. He didn't even need to fight, just standing there, he exuded an intimidating aura. He wasn't much older than me, and seeing the expression on my face, couldn't help but ask, "Miss, what happened?" I'm furious, absolutely furious. His question only made me feel like the biggest fool from start to finish. Call my dad's assistant. I want Jason blacklisted. A critical phase in his career? Ha! Let's see how you'll have a career at all. I'll make sure you have nowhere to rise. Just thinking about his excuse made me want to slap him. The driver, Noah, looked a bit taken aback. Jason? Wasn't he Miss Emily's boyfriend? What on earth had happened? Not being much of a social media person, Noah had no idea what was going on. Understood, miss. As the wind blew, I slowly calmed down. Saying I wasn't hurt would be a lie. After all, it had been a relationship, even if it was kept in the shadows and filled with caution. Oh, by the way, miss, your father asked you to come home for dinner tonight. He mentioned there would be guests. Noah seemed to suddenly recall something and spoke up. Guests? I raised an eyebrow, feeling suspicious. What scheme was the old man up to now? Did he say who? I always called my dad the old man. He wasn't actually old, but since he always called me a little kid, I started calling him that in retaliation. Over time, it just stuck. No idea, Noah replied with a shake of his head. All right, I muttered, rolling my eyes. Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced at the screen and saw it was a link from Sophie. Confused, I tapped on it. It was a trending post that had just started gaining traction. The post featured a 4-panel collage of photos showing a man and a woman being unusually close. The moment I saw the pictures, my eyes widened in shock. I recognized both people in the photos. One was Jason, and the other was none other than my distant cousin, copycat Grace. The two looked cozy, like a couple even. The timestamp on the photos, from 2 years ago, just a month before Jason and I started dating. What was this supposed to mean? I kept scrolling through the post. The user who uploaded the pictures claimed they were taken sneakily and posted on a high school confession page. At first I thought they looked familiar, and then it clicked. Don't these two look alike? Is Teeth S one of those stand-in romance stories playing out in real life? The caption read. I let out a cold laugh. So, I was just a stand-in the entire time? It wasn't hard to see why. Copycat Grace and I did share a few similarities in appearance. Plus, at some point she had started mimicking my style, which only made the resemblance more uncanny. But here's the catch. She's shorter than me, less developed, and has this whole innocent girl-next-door vibe when she smiles in a little white dress. Perfect for that high school crush archetype guys seem to romanticize. Honestly, the fact that I was treated as a stand-in didn't bother me too much. What did bother me? That I was the stand-in for her. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't particularly upset about being a stand-in. After all, Jason was just a stand-in for me, too. What can I say? Birds of a feather flock together. Any guilt I might have felt toward Jason disappeared in an instant. We were even now. Sophie messaged me again. What's going on? Isn't that your copycat cousin? What's the deal with these two? So, you were her stand-in? Didn't she take your family's money and run off to study abroad in England? Unbelievable. How does she keep haunting your life? Ah, yes. That was probably why the two of them broke up in the first place. Grace's parents had died in a car accident when she was younger. My grandfather, who had once received a blood transfusion from her father, had decided to repay the favor by giving her a substantial sum of money. He even funded her education abroad after high school, citing it as an opportunity for her to pursue her dreams. Little did he know, Grace's dreams had nothing to do with academics and everything to do with finding a wealthy benefactor. Though Grace and I were related, her family had always struggled financially. When her parents were still alive, they ran a modest fruit shop. It wasn't much, but it provided them with a stable income. After her parents passed, something seemed to shift in Grace. She became obsessed with money and started copying my outfits. If she couldn't afford the real thing, she'd buy knockoffs or cheaper alternatives with a similar design. It was infuriating. I could understand admiring someone's style and drawing inspiration from it, but blatantly replicating every detail? It was disgusting. Every time I saw her, I felt like I had swallowed a fly. And it wasn't just her style. Grace herself was insufferable. Whenever she visited my house, she'd always drop hints about wanting something of mine. At first, I didn't think much of it. They were minor items and I didn't mind letting her have them. But then she started asking for more, my dresses, my handbags, even my jewelry. When I politely refused, she'd act hurt, as if I were looking down on her because she was poor. She'd go on about how much she envied me and how unfair life was. Emotional manipulation? No, thank you. After that, I made no effort to hide my disdain for her. My grandfather noticed and stopped inviting her over. Still, when he decided to send her abroad, I couldn't help but wonder, could Grace really thrive in a foreign country with her personality? Unsurprisingly, she burned through the $20,000 my grandfather gave her in just 1 month. For her family, $20,000 was several years' worth of expenses. For Grace, a mere 30 days. When the money ran out, she shamelessly contacted my grandfather again, claiming that the cost of living abroad was high and that she needed to integrate into certain social circles. She framed it as a loan, but her intentions were clear. She wanted more money. My grandfather wasn't naive. He dug a little deeper and discovered her true spending habits. Furious, he told her he would only cover her tuition from then on. Anything else? She'd have to find another way. Meanwhile, back on social media, public opinion had shifted. My account had been discovered, and the same fans who had once attacked me were now mocking me. "So you're just a stand-in after all," they jeered. "We thought you were something special, but turns out you're nothing more than a placeholder." Jason's agency wasted no time issuing a statement. They denied any romantic involvement between us, and even released security footage from a few days ago. The video showed me entering his house with a key. Their carefully crafted statement painted me as an obsessive fan who had stolen Jason's key and broken into his home. In the entertainment industry, obsessive fans, or sasaengs as they're sometimes called, are universally despised. The online backlash was swift and merciless. The insults and accusations hurled at me were relentless. I stared at my phone, and it would be a lie to say I wasn't upset. After all, I'd invested emotions, time, and money into this. The feeling was akin to painstakingly raising a loyal dog, only for it to run off and eat trash elsewhere, refusing to come back while barking at me ferociously. What's the solution to this? Ungrateful wolves? Heat up the oil and serve them straight on the table. 3. The moment I walked into the house, I saw 2 people chatting in the living room. One of them, facing me, was my dad. The other. I froze, disbelief flashing through my eyes. Then, a wave of joy and excitement surged, barely restrained by my self-control. Thankfully, I managed to compose myself. Wearing a stern face, I strode over like a queen surveying her kingdom. Standing next to my father, I looked down at the man sitting across from him. The last time I saw him, he was 20. Now he's 27. The boyish charm had given way to a refined maturity, his every gesture exuding elegance and sophistication. "Dad, who's this?" I feigned ignorance, sitting beside my dad and casually inquiring. The man's expression remained calm. I couldn't tell if he recognized me. Instead, my dad spoke up first. "What now? You don't recognize Brother Noah? You used to cry and beg to marry him when you were a kid. Forgotten already?" His voice was as composed as ever. "Emily. Long time no see." Silent departure back then, and now his first words upon returning are, "Long time no see?" I felt a mix of disappointment and anger. Looking at him, my tone wasn't any kinder. "That was just childish nonsense. Dad, I've got plans tonight, so I won't be joining you for dinner." "Going where? Didn't I tell you we have a guest at home? Off to meet your boy toy?" I noticed Noah's body stiffen ever so slightly. But so what? Feigning indifference, I replied, "Him? We're done. He said I'd hinder his career progression." "Hinder his career progression?" Dad sounded utterly incredulous. Wasn't that guy in the entertainment industry? And didn't the biggest entertainment company belong to his family? What nonsense was this? "So what are you up to now?" Grabbing my bag, I purposely let some excitement and anticipation seep into my voice. "Sophie said there are plenty of men in the world, and if one doesn't work out, you just move on. So she set something up for me. 10 fresh faces from different companies, some rookie idols and models too, told me to check them out." I twirled the ring on my finger as I spoke. "You're really playing the field, huh?" Dad was at a loss for words for a moment. Luckily, my family wasn't the conservative type, or this conversation would have sent him into a rage. "And your brother Noah." "Well, you've got him to keep you company, don't you?" Just then, Sophie's call came through. Without any hesitation, I answered it on speaker, making no effort to avoid the 2 men in the room. In fact, I made sure Noah could hear every word. Sophie was on point. The moment I picked up, her voice rang out with excitement. "Girl, where are you? Let me tell you, I brought all the fresh meat I recently signed. Young studs, sweet boys, older types, icy and aloof, intellectual bad boys, you name it, they're here." Why was she shouting? From the background noise, I could tell she was somewhere lively. Calmly, I replied, "Almost there." After hanging up, I winked at my dad and said, Gotta run. They're all waiting for me." With a dramatic toss of my hair, I sashayed out the door without looking back. Once in the car, the atmosphere cooled. I stared out the window in silence, my mind a chaotic mess. "Why have you come back? Just like how you left so abruptly, now you've returned without a word. What is it, here to watch me make a fool of myself? 7 years. Your timing couldn't be better. 4. When I arrived at the club, the manager spotted me from a distance and immediately came over with a group to greet me. Why? Don't ask. Just know that I've got money, and so does my bestie. Surrounded by an entourage, I was escorted into the club's largest private lounge. As soon as the door was pushed open, everyone inside turned to look at me simultaneously. Sophie really is my bestie. She'd gathered a room full of every type imaginable. The scene could rival an emperor's selection of concubines. Sophie's company was known for its obsession with looks. To make it into her roster, you had to be someone who could light up the room just by standing there. The moment she saw me, Sophie waved me over enthusiastically and had the music turned down. I strolled over, casually tossed my designer bag worth tens of thousands onto the side, and leaned back against the sofa. I don't gamble, I don't do drugs. My only vice? I'm a shameless flirt. But don't get me wrong, it's all harmless fun. I'm all about admiring beauty, not crossing the line. While I was in a relationship, I'd toned it down significantly. Now that I'm single again, I've unleashed my inner wild child. "All right, everyone, introduce yourselves to Emily," Sophie commanded with a wave of her hand. Immediately, the group lined up, each flashing their brightest smiles. Well, except for the last two. The first to speak was a young guy who looked barely out of high school. Dressed simply in a t-shirt and jeans, he had a clean, fresh vibe that reminded me of the campus heartthrob from school days. "Emily, I'm Chris Summers, 19 years old, a model, 6 foot tall, and my family is..." Before he could ramble on, Sophie cut him off. "Emily doesn't have the patience for your life story. Keep it short. Next." She rolled her eyes at him, not out of malice, just pure disbelief. That guy, Mike, was the chatterbox of the group. If it weren't for his decent looks, she wouldn't have even bothered bringing him along. As one introduction followed another, I yawned. Sure, they were good-looking, but why did they fail to spark any interest? Seeing my lack of enthusiasm, Sophie looked a little puzzled. "What's wrong, Emily? Did some jerk make you feel emo?" She teased me with feigned shock, though she knew perfectly well that I wouldn't be upset over someone like Jason. "He's back." Just 4 words, no name mentioned, but Sophie immediately understood. Her jaw dropped in shock as she scooted closer to me, her face burning with curiosity. "What happened? Tell me everything." Later. Before long, the introductions were over, but I had barely listened to a word. "Not interested." "Should I call in a few more?" Sophie said mischievously, clapping her hands as if she had another trick up her sleeve. Just as the group was about to disperse, I caught sight of 2 guys at the far end, visibly sighing in relief. In that instant, my rebellious streak kicked in. The guy on the far right, Derek and Grumpy, stay behind. The 2 looked at each other as if struck by lightning. Sophie quickly jumped in. "Derek, Oliver, come sit next to Emily. Everyone else, come over to me." The previously deflated crowd instantly brightened up again at her words. Seeing Derek and Oliver with their sulky faces, I couldn't help but ask, "Why do you 2 look like you've just been forced into something against your will? Did Sophie trick you into coming here?" Amid the swirling lights and clinking glasses, I took a sip from my drink, glancing at Sophie across the room. She was playing the perfect host, toasting one person after another, even going as far as linking arms for cheers. Meanwhile, my side of the room felt cold, quiet, and utterly deserted. I hadn't even bothered to figure out who was who or what their names were. "Let's just call you Derek and Grumpy for now," I said. Derek's lips twitched as he replied in a deep, pleasant voice. "Sophie said it was optional to come here, but my manager insisted." Oliver sighed. "Same here. I was planning to audition tomorrow, but my manager suddenly told me the role had already been pre-cast." "Oh? What role and who got it?" "The Chronicles of XX. Apparently it went to some Jason guy." Well, a familiar name." I chuckled. "Do you drink?" Oliver nodded. "I do." Perhaps unsure of my intentions, he looked a little dazed. "Down 3 shots and wipe that grumpy look off your face. The Chronicles of XX will be yours." At that moment, I probably looked like some sleazy CEO pressuring a newbie. But really, what kind of pressure is this? 3 shots for a leading role? That's practically a gift from above. Oliver looked at me in disbelief, his voice trembling. "Just 3 shots? That's it?" "What?" My first thought was that he felt shortchanged. 3 shots for a lead role and he's still hesitating? But then he stammered on, "You're saying just 3 shots? Oh, so he's worried I might have ulterior motives?" I laughed. "Do I look like someone who'd take advantage of people? Drink or don't, the opportunity only knocks once." And just like that, I used the power of capital to turn Grumpy into the happiest man alive. No, scratch that. Oliver instantly transformed into my little fanboy. His chatter was even more incessant than Mike's. For a moment, I felt like I had just been duped. Meanwhile, Derek still had that sulky face. What's with the long face? I already told you I'm not some villain. If you want to drink, drink. If not, ask the waiter to bring some root beer and sit quietly in the corner. After saying that, I couldn't be bothered to deal with him anymore. I waved for the waiter and ordered a round of root beer. Honestly, being doubted like that made me want some too. Before long, others started coming over to toast me one by one. I pulled out the root beer I had prepared earlier and clinked glasses with each of them. Right now, I'm the queen of this room. Whatever I drink, no one dares say a word. Crash. The door to the private room swung open, and a tall man stood in the doorway. I glanced over casually, but then froze. Why was he here? He stared at me, his gaze unwavering. I raised my arms, playfully pulling one person close on each side, flashing an arrogant smile like a true troublemaker. I raised an eyebrow at him. Lost your way, or do you want to join us? Oliver, ever the quick thinker, raised a glass to my lips and playfully said, Miss Emily, why aren't you drinking? Didn't you say we wouldn't leave until we're drunk? He then shot a defiant look at the man by the door. The man's face darkened, barely containing his anger. Through gritted teeth, he said, Wrong room. With that, he slammed the door shut. I frowned. What a weirdo. Shrugging it off, I turned back to Oliver and gave him a thumbs up. Quick reflexes, kid. You've got potential. Beaming at my compliment, he looked even more delighted. Let your manager know tonight. Don't do anything. Just show up on set tomorrow. How could I possibly miss out on this kind of drama? Reeking of alcohol, I was dropped off at home by my driver. As soon as I walked into the living room, I saw him sitting on the sofa waiting for me. I pretended not to see him, yawned, and was about to head upstairs when his voice stopped me. Emily. I paused mid-step, turned back to look at him, lazily leaning against the handrail. What is it? Got something urgent. The man walked toward me. Emily, look at yourself. What have you become? He said, his tone dripping with disappointment, as if I had somehow let him down. His words made me laugh out loud. Still leaning against the handrail, I tilted my head and looked at him. And who do you think you are? Talking to me like you're my parent? Even my dad doesn't lecture me like this. What makes you think you have the right? Once upon a time, arrogance was my middle name. Seeing that I wasn't holding back, his face darkened. I'm your brother. Not by blood, I retorted indifferently. Noah, the foster son raised in my family since childhood, officially left when he turned 20. That was also the year he vanished from my world. I used to think that if I ever saw him again, I'd cry, yell, lose control, anything but this calm indifference. Before he could say another word, I cut him off. Noah, why did you come back? Why couldn't you just stay away like you did for those 7 years? Why couldn't you stay out of my life forever? With that, I turned around and walked away without looking back. There's a show worth watching tomorrow, so I'd better get some sleep tonight. After making a few calls and giving some instructions, I lay in bed, yawning as I stared at the ceiling. That's just who I am. High expectations, a bad temper, and a long memory for grudges. Jason, are you ready for your career to crumble? The next morning, before I even opened my eyes, the instructions I gave last night had already taken over the trending topics. The top searches were filled with screenshots of chats, photos, and plenty of damning evidence showing exactly how Jason had sweet-talked and pursued me step by step. I couldn't wait to see how his die-hard fans would react. After waking up, I put on some sharp business attire, did my makeup, and headed out. At the casting venue, the lobby was packed with dozens of male actors, all there to audition for the lead and supporting roles in Chronicles of XX. Rumor had it that Jason was already pre-selected for the lead role, so he was the only one lounging in the corner, eating, looking completely at ease. Since everyone had signed non-disclosure agreements and handed over their phones upon entry, Jason likely had no idea he was trending again. Feeling smug as the rumored lead, Jason surveyed the crowd with an air of superiority. Too bad his smugness wouldn't last long. I stifled another yawn and was about to head inside when a sudden commotion broke out. A group of people, led by the director and producer, emerged from the room. This threw the lobby into confusion, and people began whispering among themselves. Why are the director and producer coming out? Are they here to see Jason? His ego's already huge. This'll make it worse. What can you do? He's signed with a big agency and has all the right backing. Life's just unfair. Hearing the murmurs around him, Jason grew even more self-satisfied. Like a proud peacock, he stood up to greet the group. But to everyone's surprise, the director and producer didn't even glance at him. Instead, they headed straight for the entrance. Jason's face turned sour, as if he could hear the mocking laughter hidden in people's stares. He looked toward the entrance where he could barely make out someone surrounded by the crowd. That someone, of course, was me. Worried Jason might not see me clearly, I deliberately slowed down as I passed him. Seeing his face frozen like he'd been struck by lightning, I shot him a wicked smile. That smile? It practically screamed, "Your career? Watch out for unemployment." "Ms. Emily, what a pleasant surprise to see you here personally. If only you'd given us a heads up, we could have prepared in advance," the assistant director said. I took the seat at the center of the room without acknowledging him. Sensing my displeasure, the director quickly chimed in. "Miss Emily is incredibly busy. She doesn't need to notify you of her schedule." As he spoke, he handed me a thick stack of resumes from today's auditions. I flipped through a few before setting them aside. Let's continue. With my cue, the auditions resumed. Whether by chance or fate, I looked up after yawning and saw Jason walk in alongside Oliver. Because of the large number of candidates, they were brought in groups of 5. Jason was clearly shocked to see me here, but knew that securing the role was his top priority. Once the contract was signed, it would all be set in stone. The audition started with self-introductions. Each actor took turns stating their name, agency, profession, and the role they were auditioning for, followed by a chosen performance piece. Jason went first. Brimming with confidence, he chose a monologue from the lead role. As he was about to dive into his performance, a sudden sharp laugh broke the silence. Everyone turned to look at me. Unfazed, I calmly picked up my water glass and took a sip, my face betraying no emotion. After the 5 performances were over, I listened to the directors and producers as they discussed the results. The assistant director was full of praise for Jason, while being harshly critical of Grumpy, who had performed the best among the 5. I wasn't clueless. I could easily see through their hidden agenda. Once the feedback was finished, the director politely asked for my thoughts. I rested my slender hand on the table, my fingers casually tapping on its surface. Acting wasn't exactly my area of expertise, and all I could judge was whether something felt awkward or not. Supporting my chin with one hand, I looked at the visibly tense Grumpy and smiled. "What's the matter? Don't recognize me?" Just as Oliver opened his mouth to respond, Jason cut in sharply. "Emily, what are you up to now?" The assistant director immediately scolded him. "Jason!" I, however, remained unfazed. "What's with all the barking, Jason? I was talking to Grumpy." Oliver hesitated, his voice cautious. "Miss Emily." In showbiz, everyone knew how to play the game. Well, except for Jason, of course. Sensing the tension, the director quickly caught on. "Miss Emily, do you know Oliver?" What a sharp guy. I chuckled and didn't bother hiding anything. We were drinking together just last night. Then, should we give him? "I think he's great. The male lead isn't finalized yet, right? Let's go with him," I said decisively. Before the assistant director could react, Jason was already panicking. "Miss Emily, I think." "I don't care what you think. I care what I think." That shut him up. but the assistant director wasn't ready to give up. Jason is a fine young man, previously. Then give him the third male lead. Seems fitting, I interrupted. Seeing him about to protest further, my expression turned icy. Do you have any other objections? The director, clearly alarmed, quickly tried to intervene. After all, I wasn't just anyone. I was Emily, the sole heir of the family and future head of Emperor Entertainment. Crossing me? That would be career suicide. Emily, what gives you the right to boss everyone around? Even the director hasn't said a word. You're targeting me because... Jason's voice faltered mid-sentence. Because of what? His baseless accusations? I let out a cold laugh. You're absolutely right. I am targeting you. Jason, don't forget, I told you once, as long as I'm here, your career is going nowhere. Forget rising up. You should seriously consider switching professions. Maybe become a chef. You're so good at passing the blame. At first, everyone thought I was just here to support Oliver, but it turned out I was purely here to crush Jason. Both directors were stunned. They must have been too busy with the production to catch up on the latest gossip. Glancing at the editor, who had been fidgeting nervously on the side, I watched as she finally seized the chance to whisper something into the director's ear. Suddenly, the director's expression changed dramatically. When his eyes landed on Jason again, his face was a mix of shock and disbelief. The assistant director, about to speak again, was instantly silenced with a glare. If you don't want to ruin your career, keep your mouth shut. Say another word and pack your bags, you're out of my production. Seeing the director genuinely angry, the assistant director had no choice but to back down. Jason hadn't expected his golden opportunity to slip through his fingers so easily. Not only had he lost the male lead role, but it had also been handed to someone else right in front of him. The third male lead role, as described in the script, was a gold digger type of character. Anyone could tell it would draw endless criticism once the show aired. Emily, what exactly are you trying to do? Jason demanded. Isn't it obvious? I'm blacklisting you, I replied nonchalantly. On what grounds? I examined my nails absent-mindedly. Because I'm Emily. Because I'm Emily, the only child of the family, the heir to our empire, and the future ruler of Emperor Entertainment. Jason, furious and humiliated, glared at the assistant director, who now looked as timid as a mouse. Unable to hold back his temper any longer, Jason stormed toward me with large strides, his hand raised high as if he were about to strike. The moment caught everyone off guard. Did he even realize what he was doing? The director instinctively moved to shield me, while the assistant director froze in place, unsure of what to do. But I had already anticipated his move. My hand was already on the small taser in my bag. Ugh! Jason hadn't even managed to bring his hand down before he suddenly dropped to one knee, clutching the back of his leg in pain. Oliver, the quick thinker, had acted first, taking Jason down and restraining him. Hearing the commotion, the security team rushed into the room. As the doors opened, people outside peeked in, curious about the chaos. Seeing Jason in such a pathetic state, whispers and murmurs spread like wildfire. Embarrassed and enraged, he still managed to spit out a weak threat. Emily, you just wait. His words were so lame I couldn't help but laugh. Jason, didn't you hear? You're trending again. His face turned ghostly pale. I don't believe you. How could that be? Last time, it barely got any traction. Oh, I bought the trending spot, I said casually. Money really does make life easier. Exposing a scumbag? Easy, just put it on top of the trends. Today's absurd drama ended with Jason being taken away by the police during his audition. This audition was supposed to be a grand event. The media had already gathered outside, along with some reporters hired by Jason's company, ready to hype up the publicity once everything was settled. When I saw Jason being escorted out by the police, the reporters froze for a moment, Then the sound of shutters clicking and flashes exploding filled the air. They were thrilled. It was breaking news. An actor getting arrested during an audition? Unprecedented. Jason, this is just the beginning. Brace yourself. 6. According to the information I had, Jason, a man with no money or connections, had only risen to fame due to some shady dealings behind the scenes. Luckily for me, since Jason was a public figure, our relationship was mostly long distance, practically an online romance. We didn't see each other often, and when Jason suggested taking things further, Emily used the excuse of her strict, old-fashioned family values to brush him off. Jason never got the chance to take advantage of her. Otherwise, Emily might have thrown up from sheer disgust. As a qualified stand-in, all she needed to do was make good use of her face. At first, Emily did feel a bit guilty. But after being backstabbed, discovering she was just a stand-in herself, and learning about Jason's disgusting antics behind her back, Emily felt nothing but disdain. Scumbag. He deserved a bullet. As public opinion surged and the situation gained unprecedented attention, I gave it another push. Jason stayed on the trending list for 3 days. When others tried to buy their way onto the trending list to bury the story, I smirked coldly and had reporters from my company drop another bombshell. Shocking. The rise of A-list actor-linked exploitation. The entertainment industry is not above the law. The Jason Gate scandal exposing the underbelly of showbiz. It turned out Jason's meteoric rise was largely due to his using his fame and charm to lure naive young women, secretly establishing relationships with them, and then taking them to hotels. Once at the hotel, the girls were drugged and later sent to the beds of powerful men. These men, pleased with the arrangement, naturally supported Jason's career in return. The poor girls, blinded by love and manipulated by Jason's emotional abuse, fell deeper into despair. I had to admit, I was curious. According to the information I had, I was the only one who had been in a secret relationship with Jason for so long without being harmed. It wasn't until I heard that Grace had returned to the States that everything clicked. I touched my face and realized Jason hadn't spared me out of affection. He saw me as a stand-in for his white moonlight, someone he idolized too much to defile. What a joke. His white moonlight had long since fallen from Grace, becoming someone else's plaything. After Emily's family cut off all support for her, Grace had resorted to becoming a mistress to maintain her lavish lifestyle. Her recent return was due to her sugar daddy's wife tracking her down and nearly disfiguring her. The sugar daddy, who had once indulged her every whim, said nothing. He left her with a small sum of money before kicking her out. The next time I saw her, she was kneeling at my family's front gate, sobbing and begging my dad for money. From a distance, I watched as the rain smeared her makeup, but I felt no sympathy. Just then, I heard footsteps approaching. Without turning around, I saw a man step beside me out of the corner of my eye. "The rain's getting heavier. Let's go back," he said. His voice had lost its youthful timbre. Always tall, he now towered a whole head above me. "Why did you come back?" I asked, still watching the woman in the distance. "Because I didn't want to remain a mere accessory to your family. Because I wanted to stand on equal footing with you someday." "But back then I didn't care," I replied indifferently. "I cared," he said. I said nothing more. I didn't even spare him a glance as I turned and walked away. On the day Jason was sentenced to life in prison, I pulled some strings to visit him. The moment he saw me, Jason looked like an enraged lion, ready to lunge forward and tear me apart. Unfortunately for him, he was restrained, his hands cuffed to the chair, just as mine were. Looking at him like this, I didn't feel any satisfaction. Why should he still be alive? For all the atrocities he committed, he deserved the death penalty. I had his mouth gagged. not only to stop the stream of vulgarities he was undoubtedly about to spew, but also to ensure he couldn't interrupt me. With his mouth covered, Jason could only let out muffled grunts. "Why aren't you dead yet, Jason? Turns out I never really understood you." I laughed bitterly. "How ironic. You kept your hands off me because of Grace, didn't you?" At the mention of Grace's name, Jason instantly fell silent. "Seeing your photos together, I realized I was just a stand-in. Her stand-in, no less. By seniority, I should call you my cousin-in-law, shouldn't I? Too bad, though. The two of you will never have a future together." "Oh, by the way, did you hear about her return? A few days ago, she was kneeling at my family's doorstep, begging for food. My grandfather was furious. Her dirty deeds abroad are now public knowledge, being a mistress, getting beaten by the wife, having an abortion, even working as an escort. Your taste in women is truly terrible." Jason's veins bulged as if he wanted to say something, but I had no intention of listening. I continued speaking at my own pace. "I'm sure you're already aware of my family background. Originally, I planned to go public with our relationship after I graduated. By then, I would have signed you to Crown Entertainment and dedicated all resources to you. Unfortunately, you had to mess it up." I clicked my tongue twice. "Oh, right. Should I thank you for letting me off the hook for Grace's sake? Too bad. Grace has no interest in you. In fact, all these years, she's only had eyes for my stepbrother. Oh, I forgot to tell you. The reason I fell for you at first sight was because you look so much like our family's foster son. You're a stand-in, you know? And apparently, the reason Grace treated you differently back then was for the same reason. She's always been like that, stealing my things, copying my interests. But in the end, she just walked herself down the wrong path. Jason, I wish you a second trial and a death sentence. No goodbyes." With that, I flashed him a bright smile, watching his expression shift from anger to despair. Feeling triumphant, I tossed my hair and walked away. In a law-abiding society, I can't take someone's life, but I can destroy their soul. The moment I stepped outside, I spotted a familiar car. Raising an eyebrow, I made my way toward my own vehicle. Before I could get in, someone got out of the other car and blocked my path. Feeling a little impatient, I snapped, "Looking for trouble?" The man froze, seemingly not expecting my personality to have changed so much after a few years. "Are you still thinking about him?" Rolling my eyes, I replied, exasperated, "Noah, in what capacity are you asking me this? My family's ex. Foster son." "Emily, I was wrong. This time I came back to make up for my mistakes. These past few years, I've been working hard to build up a business. Noah, do you think the world revolves around you? Do you think I'd wait for you my whole life without even a promise or commitment?" "Wake up. What nonsense." I shoved him aside and got into my car. After I spent a few days moping at home, it became clear to my dad that I was firm in my stance toward Noah. Out of the blue, he announced that he'd set me up on a blind date. The guy was the son of one of his business partners, young, accomplished, polite. Apparently, he'd heard about my legendary reputation, found it interesting, and suggested meeting up. If we clicked, we could date. If not, we could just be friends. Initially, I planned to decline, but hearing the latter half of that message, I thought this guy might be interesting, so I agreed. I assumed the meeting would be at some rooftop restaurant or a 5-star hotel. To my surprise, the guy chose a dessert shop. Standing at the entrance of the shop, looking at my GPS, I started doubting the whole thing. Should I just leave? Just then, the door opened from the inside. A tall, sunny guy, at least 6 feet, stepped out in a simple t-shirt. He scratched his head and gave me a shy smile. "Please, come in." As I followed him, I couldn't shake the feeling that he looked familiar. It wasn't until I stepped into the deserted cake shop, seated at the best-lit window table, and glanced at the mango mille and the bottle of milk on the table, that his face overlapped with my memories. I blurted out, "Derek?" The moment the words left my mouth, I realized how rude I sounded. I wanted to take it back, but it was too late. Fortunately, he didn't seem to mind. Instead, he looked thrilled that I had recognized him. "Let's reintroduce ourselves. My name is Derek. I run this dessert shop as my main gig and do some modeling on the side." He looked about my age, maybe a year or two younger. Of course, he was a year or two younger than me. Compared to the cold and distant vibe I got from him last time, this time he seemed much warmer, and even extended a friendly hand toward me. I gave him a polite handshake and asked the question that had been on my mind. "I'm Emily. I don't quite understand, since you're part of the family, why. Why would you end up in a blind date set up by my best friend?" Even if the agency didn't know his background, someone with his family's standing wouldn't have done this. As soon as I said that, I saw his ears flush red. Oh, a pure-hearted puppy? Now, I was having trouble reconciling the person in front of me with the guy my dad described as someone who said, "If it works, we'll date. If not, we'll be bros." "I know you. We went to the same university. I'm 2 years younger. I saw you give a speech as a student council representative. I also know you're close friends with Sophie, so when she asked me to show up, I came." His explanation left my brain in a bit of a fog. Wait, so he came because of me? Then why did he act like he was being forced the whole time? He noticed my confusion but played coy, refusing to explain. Later, after we got together, he got drunk one night and finally spilled the whole story. Looking at a tipsy Derek who was curled up in my arms like a pitiful little puppy, I confirmed he was truly drunk before asking him tentatively, "Derek, when exactly did you start liking me?" He buried his head in my arms, his voice muffled, radiating an air of silliness. From the moment I started school, when I saw the senior welcoming new students outside the campus, I thought, wow, this senior is absolutely gorgeous. I want to take her home and make her my wife. "Then why don't I have any impression of you?" I asked, continuing to tease him. Who would have thought that upon hearing this, he would look so aggrieved and complain, "Who knows?" Before I even had a chance, that annoying Jason showed up out of nowhere. Ugh, I hate him to death. Before I could ask more, he, clearly getting more worked up as he spoke, began ranting incessantly. Since he'd been drinking, his words came out a little disjointed. "That scumbag. He actually slandered you, so I immediately bought up all his dirty laundry and plastered it across social media. That day, why were there so many people there? It made me so mad, so mad. All tall and slim and pretty handsome, but you didn't even glance at me. Oh, right, you even gave that guy some resources. Didn't even spare me a look, just left me drinking chocolate milk in the corner. Good thing you broke up with him, now it's my turn." That guy, with his shameless face, still wanted another chance? Cutting in line. No way. "You're mine now, finally mine." He was radiating a silly kind of pride, snuggling further into my arms, his face gleaming with joy. And